In this video, we'll give a quick overview of the starter example for mobile form. So this is an example that uses the Formview control in Alpha Anywhere 4.0. So let's go ahead now and we'll basically create a new UX component, and we'll pick the mobile form starter example, and I'll go ahead there. And we'll see now that what this ends up creating for us is a UX component that has a list, which is our data source for the form. It has the form itself over here, and then it basically has a series of editors to edit the values in the form. So let's quickly run it and then go back and take a look at what has actually been created here by this template. So we'll go ahead here and run it. So we'll see that the list here displays the existing records. So if we tap on a row in the list, we bring into view the actual form itself. So this is the form that has been rendered by the Formview control. And then if we tap on a field, we bring up the panel that contains the editor set and the editors. So basically this is the editor for the first name field, and if we tap the next button, we go to the next field. That would be last name. So the last name field uses also a text box as the editor. Then we get to the city field. Then we get to the state field, and you can see that the state field is now using a list control for state. So we go ahead there and make a selection and then click next. And then we get to the date of birth field, and we can see that the date of birth field is using yet a different type of editor. In this case, we're using spin lists to select the date of birth, and then we can just basically navigate through all of the fields. And then when we hit the save button, we go back to the form control over here. So this is the panel card that shows the form control, and then if we hit done, we can see that basically this row in the list is marked as dirty, the orange icon here shows that this has been an edited row. Now the sync button's not going to actually do anything right now, because this list that we're looking at over here is a static list. It hasn't been bound to a SQL database. So if we go now and look at the actual component itself to see how it's constructed, we can go first to the list, and we'll see that this particular list is just simply using static data. And then the static data fields are first name, last name, city, state, date of birth, and then actually also a picture field where we could have taken a picture. So if we go back now to the fields here, we see that the picture has been set as it's a character field because of the static data here, and we're going to store the base 64 data of the image in the picture field. Now if this was going to be a phone gap application, we would probably want to basically not store the base 64 data, but the actual file name of the image on the device, on the phone. So we would set this to be name, but in this case here we're going to just choose base 64. So since this now is a static list, that's why the synchronize buttons don't do anything. But if you start out with a static list, you can always convert to a SQL data bound list by going here on the data source tab here and convert this list to a SQL database, and then now you'll have your data source for your Formview control will now be a data bound list control. So the list control here represents the data source for our Formview control. Here's the Formview control itself. So there's our Formview, and you can see that in this Formview we've specified that our data source is the list. Here are our fields. We've gone to the picture field here, and we've said its field type is an image, and we've also basically turned on allow image capture, and we've said that the data in this field is going to be base 64 data. Then we went to the form layout, and we actually laid out the form. We just chose one field after another, and then we also basically have specified for the image control here that the control type was a data bound image, and we basically turned on allow capture, and we've also set the property for missing HTML for a missing image. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video. So continuing now, we basically see that for this image, we basically said that if there's no existing image, then just display this text over here. Tap here to take a picture, and that the method for taking a picture will be to tap on the picture itself, or we could have also said tap on a button. So we just said tap on an image. And then the next thing I need to point out is that for each of the fields we've specified the corresponding editor to use. So for first name we basically used editor set called editor set main, and the actual editor is editor text. So first name, last name, city all use editor text. Then when we get to the state field, that's using editor underbar list, and then we get to the date of birth field, that's using editor underbar date. And then the picture field basically is, it doesn't have an editor. Basically we just tap on the picture to actually open up the camera. So the actual editors that we see here are all inside an editor set. So here's our editor set. From there to there is our editor set, and then inside this editor set we have three editors: a text editor, a date editor, and a list editor. So there are our three editors, and these editors were placed inside the editor set by just going over here to these predefined editors and choosing the different editors over there. But I do want to point out though that in the case of the editor list, the actual data that you see in the list needs to be populated when the editor is open. So you can see that if I go and run this component, when I tap over there and then tap on the state, we can see that the editor is displaying the long name, not the short name, not NY, it's displaying the long name, and this list here has been populated dynamically. So if we look over here in this list over there inside the editor, we see that there's actually no data in the list. The list, it just simply has a field called junk, which is just used so we can actually lay out the list. But in actual fact, at runtime, this list is going to be populated with data that the state field specifies. So if we go back now to the Formview control and go back to the state field, we can see now that the state field specifies that we're going to be using the list editor, and then the configuration genie over here lets us specify what data the list will be populated with. So you can see here we have a JSON object that has all of the states, and for each state we store the state abbreviation and the long name, and then we've specified that we'd like to actually display in the list itself the state name, which is the long name, but store the state, which is the abbreviation over there. So this is how the state field over here in the Formview control dynamically configures the list editor, editor underbar list, so that it basically displays the correct list of choices when the user taps on the state field. Now the next thing to notice is that the actual layout of this component is really optimized for phones. So you can see that we have a panel navigator, and inside this panel navigator, actually let's go to the structure view. So inside the panel navigator we have a panel card that has the list control, we have another panel card that has the form control, and then we have another panel card that has all of our editors. So the flow of this application is you start out on the list control, and then when the user taps on a row in the list, we give focus to the next panel. So if we were to go to this list right now and look at this list's on click event, you can see that what we're going to do in this on click event is set the focus to the panel that contains the form, and then we can see we basically set the title of the panel, and we also scroll the form to the top in case the user had scrolled down in the form before going back to the list panel. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video. So to scroll the form back to the top so that when the user taps on a row in the list, the first field in the form is displayed, we go here and we get a pointer to the panel card body, and then we basically call the set scroll method, and we scroll the panel card to the 0, 0 position. So that causes the panel card itself to navigate. And then the next thing that you need to notice is that the editors themselves are also in a in their own panel. So they're in a panel called Editors Panel. And then what happens is when the editor set is invoked, so if we go look here at the editor set, we can see that in the editor set we're basically, so this is the editor set, this event here called show JavaScript is called when the editor set is opened, and the editor set itself is opened when the user taps on a field on the form. So this editor set here is basically setting focus to the panel card that contains the editors. And then the next thing that I want to point out is that we have automatic navigation. So when you go to an editor, so there I am in John, if I were to go edit John now and hit save, I wouldn't want to have to basically save this, go back to the form, and then click on last name to get and edit last name. It's going to be much more convenient to basically edit the value in John and then just simply hit the next button and edit the value in the last name field. So the ability to navigate from field to field while the editor set is opened is an important aspect of many of these mobile forms application. So these two buttons over here are implemented by simply going to this button over here, previous. You can see that we've set this button to be position absolute left 0, so this means this button is going to be left aligned, and the next button is basically position absolute right 0, so this causes this button here to be right aligned. But the actual JavaScript on these two buttons is very simple. All we do is we use action JavaScript here, and we use a navigate action. So basically we've picked Formview control action, so that's one of the built-in categories. So you can see form view control actions over there, and then the action that we specified was navigate, and then we chose the form that we'd like to navigate, and then we chose the next or previous. We can see these are the options over there: first, last, next, and previous. And then you can see that when we're navigating here, so let's go here and navigate. So if I navigate past the last field, so the last field was date of birth, so go there and there's date of birth, and now if I hit next, you can see we're going to wrap around to the first name field. So the reason that that happens is if we go back to our form control here and look at the form properties, we'll see that on form properties we've basically turned off allow null selection, which means that there always has to be a field in the form that has focus. And basically we've turned loop navigation on, and we've said that, so loop navigation means when you get to the last field and you go next, you're going to go to the first field. But we've said that when you're doing a loop navigation, do not allow a null selection. So that's basically how we got those next and previous buttons to work. So this component here, which you can create from the built-in template, represents a good starting point for a mobile form that uses a list control as its data source and uses a form control to actually display the data that you're going to be editing. And then you can take this to the next level by turning the list into a data-bound SQL list, and then continuing to enhance the layout of the form and adding your own custom editors. Thanks very much for watching.